Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It is now time for another bookish video. Hello, so in today's video, it is now March, so I am going to go over all the books that I read in February, but I am also going to go over the 2 books that I read in January. So between January and February, I read a total of 11 books, and I read 2 of those in January. So I will go over those 2 first, and then I will go over the 9 books that I read in February. And I read a lot of good books, and I finally feel like I got out of my reading slump, and that is why I only read 2 books in January. But the 2 books I did read in January were really good ones, so I'm excited to talk about those. So let's get started. So the first book that I finished in January was Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I read her 4 other books by this author, or 3 other books by this author, and I loved all of her books that I have read so far. And this one was no exception. I rated this one 4 stars. It was a very cute romance. My favorite is still Part of Your World. That was one of my favorites of last year that I read of hers. This one is about a Vanessa Price who quit her job and she travels, and she's like a influencer, and she has 1 million followers on her YouTube channel. But then she has to take custody of her sister's daughter, and then one day her sister's daughter is crying, and the neighbor next door comes over and helps her, and that is how this romance gets started. It is very funny and also kind of sad at times, but I enjoyed my time reading this, and I definitely recommend it. The second book I read in January was Rhapsodic. This was for the fantasy romance book club that I am a part of on Sahar's channel, Basically Bookish Reads. She has a fantasy romance book club where we read a fantasy romance book every month, and this is a book for January, and I rated this 5 stars. This was a really good good start to a fantasy romance series. I would definitely recommend it if you're a fan of ACOTAR or From Blood and Ash. Yeah, I had a really fun time reading this, and I highly recommend. Again, I rated it 5 stars. Okay, so I also want to go over the 2 books that I DNF'd in January. And one of those was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I loved her book, My Best Friend's Exorcism, but this one I got kind of bored in reading the beginning, and it was kind of putting me in a reading slump, so I had to put it down. I might pick it back up at a later time if I get in a more of a mood to read it. I heard it's about puppets, that's all I know about it. I didn't really want to read spoilers in case I did end up picking it back up. But yeah, I DNF'd this one, and maybe I'll let me know if I should pick it back up or if I should just leave it as a DNF. Okay, the other book I DNF'd in January was This Time Next Year by Sophie Cousins. This was actually the very first book I picked up in 2023. and I could not get into it at all. I don't even remember how far I got into it, but it was really putting me in a reading slump, and I had no motivation to read it at all, so I had to put it down, and I still don't really feel like picking it up. I haven't heard really much about this book, so I'm not sure if it like gets better or anything. So if you have read this and know if you recommend me to try again, let me know. Otherwise, I am definitely thinking of unhauling this. So yeah, unfortunately, this was not for me. Okay, now I'm gonna go through the books that I read in February, and I read some really good books. I only had one 3.5 star, the rest were 4 stars, and I had 3 5 stars. So I am gonna go over the books that I read in February. Okay, so the first book I'm gonna go over is the book that I rated 3.5 stars, and that is Promises and Pomegranates by Sav R. Miller. This is a dark romance book, and it's kind of loosely based off of Hades and Persephone, but it takes place in our world. So it's not fantasy, it's a dark contemporary romance. And this was pretty fun. I would check trigger warnings for it because it is a dark romance, but it was fun. There was just parts that I just couldn't really get into, so that's why it's 3.5 stars. All right, but I am excited to read the other books in this series. Okay, now I'm gonna go on to my first 4 star, and that is 3 Swedish Mountain Men by Lily Gold. This one was so much fun to read. It's about this girl who gets into an accident on this like in the middle of nowhere, and she runs into these 3 men, and they bring her to their like little cottage or cabin, and then they get snowed in there, and then a romance begins between all 3. It's a why choose romance, and it was very fun, and I definitely recommend. And then I'm gonna go over another Lily Gold book that I read was Faking with Benefits. This one was also really fun. It's about this girl, Layla, and her 3 neighbors. They live across the hall, and they've been friends for a while, and they have a podcast. So if you're into like podcasts and stuff, I definitely recommend this. And they decide for the podcast to start like this fake relationship with their neighbor and friend, to help her in the dating world, because she has been on a lot of dates and she asked them for help. So they decide to fake date her, all 3 of them. It's another why choose romance, and it was a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend this one as well. I gave it 4 stars because I did feel like it was a little too long, and it felt there was parts that I felt like dragged on too much. So that's the only like bad thing about it. Otherwise, I had a lot of fun with it, and I still recommend it. Okay, the next 4-star book that I'm going to talk about is Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. This is about Evie Thompson, and she doesn't believe in love anymore because her parents got divorced, and she then starts seeing these visions, and that's all I want to really say about it without giving spoilers. She then goes, like, she gets visions, and then she sees this like for like a book for this dance studio, and she goes there and meets this guy, and that's all I really want to say again about this without giving too much away. And this is where it's like a YA romance, so you can kind of see where that like where things might go. This did make me very emotional, but I still recommend it because I had a good time with it. Alright, the next 4-star read I have is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. She's the author of Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which I love that book. Gave that one 5 stars. This is her YA romance debut, and it's about Bradley and Celine. They are ex-best friends, and then they end up having to work together in this like at this like wilderness like retreat thing. And then their like friendship starts blooming again, and then things go from there. This was a lot of fun. It was a cute YA romance, and I still recommend it. I know it read a little young, which I mean, I know it's YA, so it's supposed to read young. I'm not the like audience for it, but I still had a lot of fun with it, and definitely recommend if you love YA romance. Okay, so the next 3 books I'm going to talk about, I actually read them in the 72 Hours in the Haunted House, and I have a vlog out where I talk a little bit more about these books, but I'm just going to go over them again and what I rated them. I read the one this is the only one I gave 4 stars, and that is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is a thriller, and it's about these writers that stay at this famous author's like mansion, and they get to like write like a story. They have to write a story for her, and like they get to win like a big prize at the end if they win. But then weird things start happening, and this was a lot of fun to read. There was parts that were really slow, and I felt when I was reading it, I felt the ending was kind of rushed. But I said in the vlog that I didn't know if it was because I was trying to this was the last book that I read in that vlog and during that readathon, so I didn't know if it just felt rushed because I was trying to rush to finish it, or if that is it just is rushed. But I still had a lot of fun with it, and I still recommend it if you like thrillers. Okay, the next book that I read in that vlog is Voices in the Snow by Darcy Coates. This one was so much fun, and I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. It's a horror, and it's about Claire. She gets into this accident, and this guy rescues her and brings her to his house in the middle of the woods. And she doesn't know how she got there, and she doesn't remember what happened to her. She just knows because when she wakes up that she was in a car accident. But she doesn't know anything about where she was going. And then weird stuff start happening in this house. And there's also a little bit of a romance in this, which I loved. And I rated this 5 stars. This is probably my favorite Darcy Coates that I've read so far. Okay, so then the third book that I read for those 72 Hours in the Haunted House was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. And this one was a lot of fun. It's a thriller about this woman that is looking for a job, and she's very desperate for a job. And she ends up interviewing for this job as a maid and a nanny for this family, and she's very excited for this job because she needs the money, but then stuff starts happening in this house, and you don't know what's going on and like who's bad, like good or bad. And it was just, I had so many twists in it, and it was so much fun. I rated it 5 stars. It was very good. Definitely recommend if you love thrillers with lots of twists. Alright, and then the last book I finished in February, and I also rated this 5 stars, and that is Alone with You in the Ether. I read this for Katie at Katie Colson. Her Patreon, it was her Patreon buddy read. And I love this so much. This will, the writing was so beautiful, and I think this will stick with me for a really long time. It made me like emotional in some parts, and like it like hit like very deep for me, and with like a lot of the quotes, like, and if I am so glad that Katie picked this or this got picked for her book club, because I don't know if I would have picked this up anytime soon if it wasn't for her book club. And this is probably going to go down as one of my all-time favorite books, and definitely will probably be on my top reads of 2023. Okay, so that was all the books that I read for January and for February. I read a lot of good books these past 2 months. It wasn't very many, 11 books, but I read a lot of good ones, and I'm trying to start DNFing books that I don't like. So if that means I don't read as much because I'm not finishing books that I'm not enjoying, then that's fine with me. I still think 11 books is a lot for 2 months for me. I hope I hit my reading goal is 80 books for this year, and I am starting to get out of my reading slump, so I am very excited to see all the other books that I read this year. And that is it for this video. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.